let's talk to Michael in Alabama.
Hi.
Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks.
Going good. What's up?
I feel like I got picked because my thing goes directly with that other thing that you guys were just talking about, morality.
Look at that, segues. You gotta love them.
Isn't that amazing? I had a weird feeling I might be next. So my thing is, I'm a really sassy, angry atheist, just all the time.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm angry. Well, it's my fault because I watch people like Darth Dawkins, or I watch people like this new one, Dr. Witnesser. He's like Kent Hovind to dinosaurs, but he uses Fortnite. But he's a 7-day evangelist, so it's worth. At any rate, my point is...
Sounds like you're bringing this on yourself, man.
Yeah. Dr. Witnesser scares me, except for he got kicked off Twitch. So I think it's fine now because YouTube is terrible for gaming. So we're fine now. I think
we're safe for the moment.
He's going to get a theme park.
Michael, it says you want to talk about using like words like morality with theists. I'm curious where you're going with this.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think we should be allowing theists to use the word morality anymore, and we should redivert them to ethics, because literally everything, even the stupidest things, have ethics. Like there's an ethical code to League of Legends. If you are supposed to be playing top lane and you wander around the jungle when you're supposed to be doing top lane, that is ethically incorrect to the gameplay. Same thing as you could do ethics to everything, but morality is this fuzzy language where they get to go, well, you guys don't have any morals because you don't believe in a higher power to tell you what those morals are.
Mm-hmm. So I get that. I think that not allowing people might be a bit difficult. I'd love to pick some other things we don't allow theists to do first. But I like where you're going with this. I think that ethics is more grounded in what conversations we actually end up having, right? Conversations about how to act towards each other and in society, and along rules agreed upon by larger groups. So I mean, I'm down if you can get the theists to cooperate. Like, that's cool.
So maybe I'm just a bit confused about the wording.
Yeah, Katy, what's your question?
Maybe I'm just confused a bit about the wording, but if you're saying that there's like an ethical action to do in a game, like, are you saying that like the ethics of chess are to do something, or there's ethics to flipping a coin? What do you mean? Or are you saying the way that you make choices in the game?
Big or small ethics apply. So like morality doesn't apply to League of Legends, really. I guess you could argue some fuzzy. Again, I don't like morality. It's like
I guess I can't see the difference. What's the difference? So like you could say in League of Legends, if you play the game in a really like dickhead way, you will upset some people, and it's morally bad to randomly upset people, or you could say it was ethically bad to do it.
Because I mean, what I'm saying with ethics is it's meme versus entire idea, right? An ethical conversation, you can get down to the point of literally anything. It doesn't have to be just religion. You can. It doesn't have to be just if it's ethically wrong to harm other people in this way or that way. It's, what I mean? So, because ethics have different places in academia, right? We have business ethics. We have there's ethics in art. There's all of these things that if you do them the wrong way, you would be ethically in the wrong, but they don't all apply across the board. Do you see what I'm saying? Each ethical thing has to be discussed in each specific thing you're talking about. What I'm really saying is, instead of letting the religious people in general use black and whites, force them into the gray areas. You guys generally do a good job of this, and I'm mostly not criticizing about this. But I feel like the Christian trump card, or in what I see, is, well, where do you get your big laws from? Why is murder wrong? And I go, well, ethically, I can give you 100 reasons why it's wrong. But and also by the definition of the word murder, like kill something. Okay, that's where we're getting into more of a gray area, and we can have a conversation. It also, I think, makes for better conversation in general.
Well, here's my thoughts on this, Michael. I think that we need to be working with the language that the other person is speaking. So if you can get a theist, whatever religion they're a part of, to use the term ethics, you might actually be able to have a more nuanced conversation because it doesn't have all the religious baggage that morality does, right? Christians, or, I'll talk about Christians because that's my experience. Christians seem to have a very, ownership-y kind of vibe with morality. Like, we own it, it's ours.
Right,
ethics is a little bit more neutral and can be a little bit more allow for that nuance. That said, I think you're at the mercy of whether or not the other person wants to talk about ethics and think about ethics in the same way that you do, right? Because they might use ethics in a very different way. So I like the idea. I'm not sure how you'd implement it, though, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I be being very forceful in the conversation. It's good for me because I'm pretty brutish about, no, I'm not talking about that. I want to talk about this. But then I also understand that I'm also looking at a very aggressive part of atheist conversation. But I find it all really, really, like Doug TenNapel gets to talk to people still. Like, he's been a homophobe jerkwad forever because he invented Earthworm Jim or whatever. And he was on with Bosch like literally yesterday spewing like anti-mask stuff.
I mean, I think you're hanging out in some parts of the internet that I don't necessarily, just for my own mental health and sanity. If you're keeping an eye on these people and you're like, hey, in this situation, this conversation would go down well in this way, I'm going to leave that to you. If you want to do that, go for it. I think we need to be careful about forcing other people to use the same words we use in the same way, because that's going to cause a lot of friction. A better option, I think, would be to have that conversation, be like, okay, what do you mean by morality? Here's what I mean by ethics. Can we pick one or the other so we're not confusing and muddying the water by using words that mean kind of the same thing but with differences?
I also think that
adjacent. Okay, sorry.
I was just going to say, I also think I understand this kind of pressure of, whenever we bring up this word, the argument always becomes about this stupid word rather than about the actual topic that we want to discuss. So it's best if we just use a different set of words and we just talk about the concept rather than letting them have all this nonsense. But the problem is, like, this is kind of thing I face a lot in these like frontline arguments with the idiots on Twitter, is you'll be like, well, every time I say this word, they're going to flip out, so I'm just not going to say it. But then the problem is in a way, you're kind of conceding that word to them, and you're conceding that definition to them. And in a small scale, like if you're at the pub and you're trying to change someone's mind and you're like, well, I'm not going to say the word morality because it's a waste of my life. But in a kind of wider scale thing, if you're on the internet and all of the atheists pick up on this point, like, oh, we're going to avoid saying the word morality, then morality becomes a Christian thing.
Yeah.
And then when we, like, that might be true for like frontline atheist battles or something. And then the general public obviously don't know the difference between any of these words, and they just, they'll just go along with it. So when the Christians say, we define morality like this, and all the atheists are like, well, all right, we're not talking about morality, we're talking about ethics, then there's just no pushback to their position. And really, like, it doesn't actually matter the difference between those two words so much when you're arguing for like whether we should have a law ruining someone's life or not. Like, we shouldn't have that law.
Right.
So when you're convincing the public of it, you don't want to be shying away from the words that they understand, I guess. So
I think there was a similar conversation that we had a couple weeks ago with somebody who called in and said, I call myself a naturalistic pantheist so that I can talk to theists without them freaking out at the fact that I'm an atheist. And on the one hand, okay, I get where you're coming from. It'll facilitate better conversations on the outset. But again, I call myself an atheist very specifically because I don't want to concede that word, right? And I don't want that word to become just the stereotype that a certain type of person uses, right? It applies to across the board. So I see where you're going with this. This is an ongoing conversation that many different people have called in about with various points about when do we concede a word versus push back on it, and is pushing back on the word worth the argument itself, right? So I don't know. I think it's worth having a longer conversation about, but I'm inclined to agree with Katie. We don't want to concede it.
I recently had this own kind of battle in my own mind about when arguing about LGBT issues and the lines between sex and gender. And when you talk about gender, there is a certain set of arguments where they will always try and suggest that gender is just about like stereotypes. And you're like, well, okay, well, I'll agree. We'll just use the word stereotypes. That's bad. And we'll just use the word sex to discuss people's body setup and stuff. But then you're conceding this word to them to mean nonsense. And then when the general public uses the word gender, like they all do, then all of a sudden the only people defining those words are the anti-trans people.
Right.
So yeah, it's the same thing.
It's a whole deal. But thanks for calling in, Michael. We've got one more caller that we need to get to before the end of the show. But maybe moderate the kinds of stuff you're consuming online, just because there's enough outrage in the world, and we don't need to be more mad at random internet people than we need to be. I say as I host a show where people call in to yell at me on the internet.
I was going to say either that or come brawling with me on Twitter on the front line. Like, it's what I do.
Oh my gosh! Well, you're making a difference there.